All right, let's double check to make sure we've got our live feed going here. And we will go ahead and get started in just 1 minute. All right, we got Facebook, we got YouTube up and going. Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and get this exciting show started today with our special introductory video. So this is an exciting day, Maria. We've got the opportunity to attend an invitation-only event called NextGen Group. And we're gonna go in and be able to get into their think tank and see what they're up to. So let's go see what's going on.
See what ideas are brewing in there.
Shut the door!
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us at today's PoE Texas Converge PoE live stream. So excited, as you saw here. We are hosting live today from NextGen's Mindshare event right here in Austin, Texas. And of course, I have my lovely co-host, Miss Maria Muradell,
Hi again,
joining.
everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
And she will be manning the chat line. So go ahead, if you're out there, check in with us, say hi. We'd love to see that you're out there, and we want to hear from you. So today's special event is all about surviving with new IT technology. This group that's here, and they're very quietly waiting, which is amazing here. They're very quietly waiting to participate and give their feedback to us and you, our audience, as to what technology is coming down the pipeline. What are things you need to know about? And they want to know what you're interested in. So make sure you get on the chat line, make sure you chat with Maria, tell her what questions you have, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to hand it over to Maria to introduce the group and our audience today.
Yep, so today we're joined with the co-founders and members of NextGen Technology Group. They're joining us from all over the nation. A lot of them with us today are actually from the Northeast. So a lot of them are from Connecticut, Massachusetts, and they all work together to collaborate, to share, to help each other expand their knowledge and their business in the field. And they all work to grow their business as well, and the knowledge with anything upcoming new in the technology and the telecommunications industry. So we're really excited to have them with us, have our first on-the-road show on site at their Mindshare event. It's semi-annual, I believe, so we're going to hear from some of them today on what their takeaways are from the event and what they love about being involved with NextGen.
All right, so with that, we prepared a quick introductory video so you can learn a little bit more about NextGen. We're going to throw it up here for you, the audience, and I apologize, all of you guys sitting here in the audience here with us live today are going to miss this, but we'll go ahead and throw it up.
Communications IT, we do Mindshare
and we're going to
events.
get that restarted from the beginning.
The NextGen Group is a bunch of owners that got together to talk about our profession. Communications IT, we do Mindshare events. The Mindshare event gives us a chance to vet out techniques and learn about the products, learn about the different changes in the industry, learn from each other.
NextGen Group, to me, is a group of like-minded individuals that are in the same industry, that share the same experiences, the same troubles, and want to get together and share how to better do it, how to go back to our business and help to motivate our people.
There's no question. Why would someone not join a group like this? You get to hobnob with really successful people and learn what their tricks are. You will probably be able to contribute something to the group that has made you successful. You'll also learn half a dozen things per meeting that could really help your business.
Well, but when I come to these events, my staff knows that I'm going to come back with all sorts of changes, things that, all right, now we're going to change focus, we're going to start doing this, or I learned this. So for me, it's very exciting to go back and share that with them, and then just to make those changes happen.
There are two things that I most enjoy in life, in my career, that get me really excited. One is closing that big deal. And the other major thing I really love is to best practice sharing with my peers. I've been in a number of groups over the years that join together like-minded professionals, and we find ways to work together to help everyone succeed.
And when you come to NextGen, you kind of line up the strategy that you're going to take for the next 12 months and next 60 months, the next 120 months.
The one thing that's consistent in this industry, and I guess every industry, is changes happening all the time. And if you're not involved in a group like this that you can share those changes with and what you need to do, then you get left behind.
All right, that was a great video. Thank you everybody for being patient. I know it was a little quiet in here on our end. But we're doing a great show today. Love to talk about IT services, and the NextGen group is that group of like-minded individuals who are interested in IT services. So for everybody out there, check in with your comments. But they asked us to get started today with something fun. So I'm hoping you guys are interested in a little bit of something. Last October, IEEE released the new 802.3 BT standard. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the BT standard, that allows power sourcing equipment to get all the way up to 90 watts. And that's exciting. And it gets down to close to 77, 78 watts at the power device. But what's new and exciting about this standard, and I'll bring up a little bit of information for those of you at home to look at about with this new standard. So if you're not as familiar with Power over Ethernet, there are different standards. And let's start with this first standard. That's the base standard. IEEE 802.3 AF, which is your normal standard. Most of you guys have probably worked with this on your phones. Your IP phones, IP cameras typically run on PoE, and that PoE runs up to 12 watts of power, and that's exciting. But what's exciting a few years later, of course, what happens when you get a bunch of engineers together and they're having fun with trying out new things? More power. They all want more power. So IEEE came out with a new standard called the 802.3 AT standard, and that's PoE Plus. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that as well. The PoE Plus standard is exciting because what it does is it allows you to get 30 watts of power out and 25 watts of power at your power device. And for those of you who have seen this, Bob Rankin, who's going to be on our show today, who's going to be hosting. He's got a couple of PoE Plus projects where he shows what PoE Plus can accomplish. And I'm not going to steal his thunder with that.
Yeah, no spoilers.
Yeah, so no spoiler alert there. But what happened was, then the next step that came up with is, we're going to jump this over here, is we're going to go here, the 802.3 BT standard came out, and that BT standard took us up to 90 watts. Very exciting. So while we're sitting here, I'm going to go ahead and pull out something new and fun. So I apologize about the noise, and I'll hopefully hold it up for everybody to see here. One sec. I brought a little surprise from the office. Just came in. All right. Let's see if y'all in our studio audience can see. This is a 2x2 troffer that came from HEW, and I'm sorry about the noise here. This came from HEW, and it has integrated Power over Ethernet on the back through Igor. And this is a demo that just showed up in our office, and it's very exciting. What this means is that Power over Ethernet can now power the infrastructure and lighting in office spaces. In fact, we're going to do a whole show on April 30th with Igor talking about this solution, since they demoed it at our office. So I'm going to open it up here. Do you guys have any questions for Maria and I about Power over Ethernet for lighting or other big infrastructure solutions, including televisions are going to Power over Ethernet? We work with a company called Thin Labs, and they do up to a 46-inch television computer that's PoE powered on the new BT standards. So what can we answer for you guys out there in the audience? Michael. Power management and being able to integrate your entire building management as the question was, is power management a reason to do PoE lighting? And the answer is yes. Power management, the new systems allow you to manage your power and control it at a very detailed level. You can change the power, like the output of the lights, and you can have them all set up on schedules where they can turn on and off at different times. So there's the gross power management of just turning on and off the lights. The efficiency of the LED light stays about the same, but you get much better control than just trying to do a motion detector in the corner. And so power management is one of the reasons why you do it. It's definitely not the only reason why you do it. So the question is do you need to have a dedicated home run cable run back for each light, or can you do them in series? And the answer is yes. Most of the manufacturers and designers are coming up with a solution for it where the yellow port on the device, let's see if I can point to it while I'm looking at the camera, the yellow port takes a home run cable back to the main control wherever you're doing. And you can also do node-centric layouts where you have PoE switches remote in the field that can do the power. But then once it gets to that yellow port, there's an output port here. Let's see if I can get to it. This blue output port will extend the power and control onto other devices. And it's only until you run out of the power budget of that single line that you have to run another one. So there's an element of design and planning that goes into a PoE lighting solution to be able to create the right budget for the devices in series. But no, it's not a home run cable for every light. And that's really an important feature for cost and for infrastructure. Because we know, a network drop is not free for every home run you have to do. I'm going to go with Bob in the back. So this is a question of how this is going to impact the market that's historically been dominated by electricians. One of the key features here for companies looking to get into this business is you have to have somebody who's familiar with hanging lights according to the commercial code. And that's not rocket science. It's something that you can easily accomplish, but you do need to be able to hang it in a suspended ceiling or hang light fixtures into sheetrock. So that's an important new feature that you would be taking on in technology in addition to the lighting system itself. What it means for electricians, though, is this would take that scope of lighting off of the division, I think it's division 26, and moves it to division 28. And what's important about that you need to know as people who are proposing this is when to try and have that conversation. The last time you want to try and do that is after the project has been bid and they've had all these lights on division 26, and then somebody comes in and just does a cross out of the lights on division 26 and says, we're just going to VE that out and move that over to division 28. What ends up happening is it's hard for contractors to back those numbers out. So your ideal is to get with the architect early on in the conceptual and the design phase and design it so that the lighting and the infrastructure for the lighting appears on the instrumentation and controls drawings division 28. And that's a really important feature. But it does mean you've moved that scope of the lighting and infrastructure from division 26 into division 28, where you guys are playing and are able to take advantage of that opportunity. That's a great question. Do you need a special cable to do PoE lighting, or can you use standard Cat 5e or Cat 6 cable? The simple answer is you should be able to use Cat5e, just regular Cat5e, for what you're doing. A lot of people have standardized on Cat6 because the Cat6 gives you a higher conductor thickness, and that conductor thickness improves your energy efficiency, and it does give a level of confidence, an increased level of confidence in the infrastructure. Now, having said that, there are opportunities now where companies like Legrand, Superior Essex, Belden, we got some Southwire products. There are a range of products that are Cat5e, meaning they're rated for Cat5e for communication speed, because the lights don't require Cat6, 10 gig rates. They're rated for Cat5e data, but they are a thicker conductor, and that thicker conductor allows the higher power to transfer. And so I'd say check out some of those new cable standards, and we'll be talking with some of those on our live stream going forward, what those thicker conductors look like and how you get the power. But they're designed for that 100-watt power standard, which is exciting, but it saves you over having to do a full Cat6 infrastructure. And no, you don't need Cat7 for this. I'll just toss that out there. Heat issues for the light or for the bundle?
For the cable, the above transport, and
Fantastic. So the question is how do we deal with heat issues? And the simple answer is the light is about the same, so it's designed to handle the heat load at the light itself. But the big question, I think, if I'm understanding you right, is how do you handle the heat buildup in large bundles? So TIA has new standards that they've issued about how to bundle cables if you're doing 100-watt PoE. And the new standards really indicate don't bundle them as tightly, like as many in bigger bundles. What they've shown is that you can break them down into smaller bundles, and I should have prepared to show some of this, but if you break them down into the smaller bundles groups rather than one single big tight bundle, but you break them down into smaller groups, those are able to dissipate the heat effectively and not cause long-term wear and tear on those cables.
We have a comment from Facebook. Sorry if anyone has a question in our live audience. But Tom Willis wanted to follow up on the cabling for the higher wattage. He says, can you use Cat6 up to what specific wattage? Is there a limit on using Cat6 cable?
Right now, the limit is the IEEE BET standard. By the way, hey, Tom, always good to have you on the show. We love Tom. Tom is one of our regulars, and he's a great participant in the show. So shout out to Tom. The limit is that 90 watts. So the 802.3 BT standard is really designed for that 90 watt output power, and that would be the limit that you would expect. But in terms of what can the cables actually handle, well, let's put it this way. I was at a show where some guys were flashing 150 watt PoE, wow. And that was huge. And they said they were running it on Cat6, no problems. But I do know that guys like Superior Essex and Belden, they rate their cables for that 90 watt range and 100 watt because there's also a PoH standard that's 100 watts. Mm-hmm. It's not an IEEE standard, and all those cables are designed for that 100 watt standard. So great question, Tom. We'll go to Bob. So the question is will the PoE extenders that PoE Texas offers extend the BT standard? The answer is we are coming out with that next month. We're upgrading. Right now our PoE extenders handle 30 watts in and extend 30 watts on the AT standard. Next month we're upgrading it to the dual signature BT standard, which will get you the 90 watts. Now maybe I could take a second to talk about what dual signature versus single signature PoE is. One of the things that not a lot of people know about with the standard is that the 802.3 BT standard, before it was issued, people were making 802.3 BT products, or what they would have called compliant products. And what they basically did was they negotiated 802.3, they negotiated PoE Plus on the mode A wires of your network cable, which would be 1, 2, 3, and 6, and they negotiated PoE Plus on the mode B wires 4, 5, 7, and 8. So basically, what they would do is they would negotiate PoE Plus on all 4 pairs, and that would get them up to 60 watts. Doing it that way is called dual signature. And a lot of the older devices, in fact, a lot of the stuff you'll still today that you see with 60 watt PoE or Ultra PoE or PoE Plus Plus are actually dual signature. Then once the IEEE came out with a new BT standard, it's called a single signature. And what it does is it does a slightly more complicated signature on just the Mode A wires, but it tells your power sourcing equipment, I'm actually fully compliant signal signature PoE 802.3 BT. And so what you may find is that your products should be, the standard is supposed to be backward compatible to incorporate the dual signature. You may occasionally run across a situation where if you have a dual signature power sourcing equipment or dual signature power device, it doesn't negotiate the power properly. So that's going to be one thing you're going to watch out for, that is that conflict of dual signature versus single signature BT power. You have any questions coming in from our...
I threw up a question in there just for the entire NextGen group as a whole. Michael, who I think is with us today, also gave us an answer, but I'd love to hear from other members. So I'll throw up my question. So I was just interested in knowing what are some of the benefits that members can gain if they're not specifically in the telecommunications industry. And then Michael did let us know that some of the benefits, I'll throw those up there, that they get to buy their products at a discounted rate as a group, and also get their voices heard, which is very important. Because of their size, they're able to do that. And then they also get to, I think as mentioned earlier, they get to collaborate with each other and share tips that each of them have learned maybe from their specific business, and it really helps them grow their business. But I'd love to hear what others have input as well.
Well, fantastic. Are we ready to transition to that part of the
so.
live stream where we get to learn more about...
Hear from our live audience
today. So, if you're out there and you're not talking on the mic, feel free to go ahead and type your comments in on the live stream. Maria is picking them up, and they do appear on the live stream, so that's great. But why don't we bring it over
our first guest?
Our first guest, who is the head, who's the chair of this group of like-minded individuals, who will give us a little bit more about NextGen. I'm going to pause unless you guys have more questions about PoE lighting.
Looks like they're ready.
All right, so we're going to call up David Roberts now. Let's have him come on down. Yeah, we're going to get a nice clap. There we go. Come join us, David, down on the hot seat. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Yes, sir.
This is an exciting time. Maria and I have had so much fun so far already. So, Maria, brought up this question here, and I'll bring it back up here. Let's see if we can bring it up. What are some of the benefits that your members get as part of the NextGen group?
So NextGen was founded originally about 12 years ago as a best practices group, which was really the primary overarching component that makes the group what it is. It's based on deep relationships within the group. There is buying power. So by nature, we're not a buying group, but over time, it has evolved to a component of that does allow us with the buying power in the room and the entire group to achieve some economies of scale with vendors. We typically will only have 1 to 2 primary vendor partners within any particular category of service. And so we're pretty loyal to our vendors. That's a win-win for both the vendors and our members. So we get lots of access to executive leadership and management, product development input. We were just talking about that in one of the sessions prior to this. So primarily, it's we had stabled off at a membership level. We're a relatively small group. We leveled off about 25 members a few years ago. After 8-9 years, we did a NextGen 2.0 relaunch and agreed to kind of take it in some additional new directions. And so we've added 9 new members in the last 8 months. We have 6 new members, 3 of which are represented at this event. So we're in a growth mode, a growth pattern, and it's going really good.
Fantastic. Very exciting.
And by the way, can I apply for 5 CPE credits for the information you provided earlier? That was really good.
Well, thank you. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get Bixie to let us get in there and do this presentation at Bixie in the fall. Well, that's fantastic. So, what questions do you guys have out there, or what comments? I'd love to hear from the audience here, the NextGen group here, about what are the things they like the most, and hopefully you'll relay them to our live audience who are attending the show remotely.
Not all at once.
Yeah, don't everybody jump up at once. Tough question. That's
Tough.
One of those weird questions you ask people, what do you like? And then everybody's like,
Really? Do you want me to expound
Yeah,
on that?
go expound on
The
the
answer was relationships, and fortunately that was the first thing thrown out. So I get lots of questions a lot of times from members or potential members that are being recruited or asking to be discussed for membership into the group. It's typically invite only, but you do have to have a recommendation from an existing member. But that's primarily because we've never officially lost a member over the 12-year history. And so we primarily are all about relationships. And most of the comments I get back from our vendor partners that discuss the differentiators between our group versus some of the other groups out there. There's plenty of groups. I've seen lead groups, executive management, leadership groups, training groups, buying groups. We are none of those at the core. We are a relationship group, and it comes through when the vendors meet and they get embedded into the group. And you can only experience it. I will argue you can only experience that level by being at a live event. We do 2 events a year. They're short, brief, 2-day events. We're in, out. We have full internet access the whole time to make sure people are connected while they're here. They tend to be very, manageable budgets for travel. We do them at reasonable places, so we're not just wasting money. But ultimately, when the events are ran, you have to just be at an event to get the experience on the relationship. You just can't do that on a web conference or a conference call.
That's fantastic.
That was a long expounding on relationships. One-word answer.
Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing great. Well, Marie does ask a question. How does your team prepare or stay up to date for changes in the industry? And how do you pass along these industry updates to your NextGen members? This is the topic of the show today. How do you help your members survive?
That's a good question. So one of the major overarching components of the group is one for all. And so ultimately, I rely on, even in my own business, primarily my day job. I'm pretty busy working as a CTO over at Core, and I rely on, I can tell you just in the last few months, I have directly relied on the information, support, research, experiences, details from 3, 4, 5 members within the group myself. Having ran the group for 12 years, I learn at least 3, 4 times more than I provide to the group on a routine basis. So the concept is, if anybody in the room or in our membership is experiencing a challenge, whether it be revenue, the commoditization of our industry, the growth of IoT, which has godforsaken amounts of growth potential that we're already experiencing, the industry has undergone a massive change. I like to refer to it as the commoditization of a lot of the categorical components that we operate in with our members, and not all of us know how to handle that, and nor do we handle it the right way, nor is there one single right way to handle any particular component or change in the industry. So literally one member has the capacity to rely on 30, 35 additional members. We have open communication access within the private group. We typically have NDAs across everyone, so the information that's in the group stays within the group. So it's a protected environment. We've published white papers before internally within the group on salaries, hiring, firing, best practices, contract management, examples, templates, you name it. We archive all that data, and that data is provided in open access to the members only for use in their business.
Excellent. Well, let's see for our live audience, the people out there. Are you willing to open up and share a little bit of what's secret going on in here? You mentioned the IoT industry earlier. What are you guys seeing as a group in terms of the IoT industry? What's happening, and how is that impacting IT service providers? And this is both from the perspective of consumers or your customers and for you as suppliers.
So obviously IoT, when you look at the numbers, I think the current numbers On the expectation for 2020, which is just around the corner, the numbers are, fairly staggering. 4 billion people connected, upwards of 20 billion devices connected over the last few years and leading into 2020. Literally the numbers are staggering. I actually compared recently some number expectations for IoT growth in 2012. I looked at them in 2015, and then I looked at them in the current present. And the numbers they expected in 2012 and 2015 with the analysts were, 300-400% off low. So obviously that's probably going to continue. We're probably going to continue to underestimate. I think embedded systems is where we don't even think about a device, right? And with the advent of wireless plus embedded systems, everything's an IoT. I'm a security practitioner, so I spend a lot of time in the information security side. And so obviously we're concerned on the security side about the proliferation of IoT devices, because any device that touches the network is a potential weak link. There's not a whole lot of, maybe a water level monitoring device on the Wi-Fi. I haven't seen a whole lot of those that are TLS 1.2 protected, right? Like the manufacturers don't, on those devices, because they're so small, simple, commoditized, they don't tend to think in terms of security and keeping up with some of those trends a lot of times. And so that creates security risks. Now a business that used to be, more of a telephony-focused VAR or even a traditional data infrastructure VAR is now becoming an MSP. We're getting asked questions. They want to monitor temperature, water, humidity, all the details within our entire organization. But those are just devices with embedded systems, and they're operating on our wireless networks. And the proliferation of those devices, now you're getting into subnet issues and Class C, and what if I take a small business? We never thought a small business with 20, 30 people could max out a Class C subnet with 256 devices without having to expand,
Really?
right? Now we have to grow that. So now we're getting out of our comfort zone for some vendors. The proliferation of the IoT devices is creating all kinds of different angles of concern that have to be addressed. Security, expansion of networks, the growth, storage. Right? Storage is out of control. What happens when we do store? We have to replicate, backup and replication. We have to now push those replication stacks over internet connections. So now we got bandwidth concerns. So it just continues to grow and spider out. And fortunately for us, our members within the group, the bulk of our members tend to be traditionally on the telephony side with a handful of data. And so we have gone through great effort to look at all of these challenges, expose them wide open, discuss them openly at our events, and follow-up components, and provide solutions, vendors, VARs, templated options for them to solve some of these challenges that they're not used to dealing with.
Sure. And so I'm playing it back. I'm hearing a couple of different aspects of the IoT that are important. Number one, security. So as you pointed out, as we get into the IoT devices, and the IoT devices cover, if I'm understanding right, mostly wireless devices that you connect to do a specific job on your network. For example, if I'm doing IoT-based access control or monitoring sensors, the key here is that both the consumer, so me as a user at the office, I have to consider what would be, or start thinking about the security implications of knowing my water levels or the temperatures in the office, whether those could pose a security risk. And sometimes that's not intuitive right out of the gate to think, oh, I'm going to put Alexa on my countertop and she's going to turn on and off all the lights in my office. What the implications are for you as a business in general.
While she's listening to everything.
Well, she's listening to everything, as the news has really pointed out today, or recently, and that's really important. And that also means you need to be discussing with your service providers the security. And so we're asking, VARs and service providers to start being conscious of security, where in the past they were just making sure that their network is blocked in and the network is safe. But now we have to consider there are basically pathways of devices out of the office and what those security implications have. And on that, building on that, there's, if I'm hearing you right, there is the wireless infrastructure in the device. Because it used to be, I had a phone, I had a laptop, and that pretty much covered what each individual person would have. At what point do I start to as an owner or as a service provider, what point do you start making recommendations to upgrade the infrastructure with respect to IoT? Any rules of thumb?
So, I mean, typically this is where we get down into the weeds on, the power, the analytics on the equipment powering. That's another issue, right? If I'm going to, not everything is going to be wireless. When we push down in the commoditization of the micro devices, it's oftentimes needs to be wireless, but ultimately wired is still obviously more reliable than wireless. We've known this for years.
We like that
That's
at
not
PoE,
changing.
Texas. Yeah.
We try to broadcast over wired, but when necessary, we will do wireless. So wired is obviously the preference, and wired gives us this unique ability because it does have the power capacity. There's lots of discussion about, wireless and power, and, we'll probably leave that to the Tesla guys and other people smarter than me. But ultimately, if you look at the wired connectivity in a building, the typical small business that has 20, 25 users today, we used to be able to go in and put a 48-port switch in. If it was PoE, there was almost nothing we couldn't accommodate with that one device at the localized connectivity. That's no longer the case, right? Like you may have 200 devices. You may have a 1-to-3, a 1-to-4 ratio for devices. Even though a smaller percentage of those are going to be wireless, we are still dramatically increasing the number of ports. Obviously, if you look at switchgear purchasing and statistics, it's not going down, right? Which is good for you, right?
Yeah.
So PoE switching, routing, all of those components is going up as a ratio of the devices, and that's creating, the design, all the templates, right? All the numbers, the ratios, the statistics we used to operate on, they no longer work. They're just not valid. It's changing. You have to constantly look at the different ratios, the sizing, organization sizes. What are they doing under what conditions? And then obviously, where are you getting that data from? Obviously, with the proliferation of data, everybody's an expert and nobody's an expert all at the same time. And everything on the internet is true, right?
Well, then let's ask this question. I know there's security limitations, which you can share with us. And I'm not going to ask you to broach those too much. Hint, 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 wink, wink. Where are some of the new exciting IoT technologies coming out for businesses?
So, I mean, obviously, I think the fastest growing, although I don't know that it's really the financial benefit, but it can operate as a loss leader. You've got the commoditization pushing down on the cheap stuff, right? For 20, 30, 40 bucks, you can get all types of devices now. Your water monitoring, humidity monitoring, this monitoring almost anything with a basic sensor, a wireless connection, or a physical RJ45 connectivity. You can monitor those things. We were just talking yesterday. One of our vendor partners, SnapAV, that sells the Wattbox product. It's power management. Got the Ethernet cable in the back of it. We put it in the closets. It acts almost like a UPS, a power management device. Us as VARs, we connect everything to it. We label it in a soft label on the web GUI, and we manage it. So this is a perfect example. Very simple device, few $100s, fundamentally transforms the ability or the need to roll a truck to manage something on a reboot, a core server, a critical device. We can reboot it with a click of a button. We can monitor its activity, all from a device that cost a few $100s that we didn't have a few years ago. Now, what are we concerned about as soon as something like that comes out? Well, now we've got security, because if you can get to that device yourself as a VAR or as a management help desk or a team remotely from the internet, well, guess who else can? Other people can too. And so not everybody is a security practitioner. There's probably a good reason for that, because the acronym list is too long and too complex and constantly changing. But we were just talking yesterday with one of our vendor partners, Wildix, on the side, who is a WebRTC voice platform, which obviously is web-based. We were discussing HTTPS versus HTTP. We had a little debate about whether HTTPS has ever been hacked. I would argue the protocol may not have, but the underlying encryption components have. On SSL, you have SSL 2.0, you have really 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and then SSL, which is a secure socket layer, became SSL 4.0, which is when we transitioned into TLS. TLS is a relatively secure component of encryption for web traffic, but what level? 1.0, 1.1, 1.2 minimum. We are operating currently in the business I'm in on the federal side. We are held to generally a higher standard than commercial. Our goal is to never get in front of Congress and have to testify for a breach. We joke about that, but not always. And so you look at TLS 1.2 when operating over an HTTPS, and literally everything I just said is actually applicable when the VAR goes and buys a $300 watt box to manage all their devices through power management and installs it at the customer site. What happens when that device gets breached and becomes an element of access to that network? Who's responsible for that? It's the guy who sold it to them. And so that's where, I mean, I tend to focus on the security side just because that's where I've lived for the past 2 or 3 years, heavier in layers that I, sometimes wish I didn't, but it's been a huge learning curve, and there's a lot. But again, the proliferation of the IoT devices is just splintering out with the challenges that we have to deal with, and that's why I don't know how. This is not a shameless plug, but I would never ever want to be running a VAR of any size without a group like this, without help from multiple different people. I just don't think most modern VARs in the sub $5 to $10 million annual revenue range should go it alone. I just think that's a bad idea. There's too much risk and exposure.
That's very good feedback. So I want to open it up to this group, the Mindshare here. Any topics you guys want to toss out there, either chatting on the video or just yelling it out to us. Where's IoT going? What does our audience need to know about IoT and how it's changing?
You all are excommunicated from the group if you don't answer the question. Mm-hmm.
Miniaturizing, so taking your technology and miniaturizing it on a phone. And maybe that topic is, we sometimes call that convergence. All of a sudden your phone, where 10 years ago a phone was just a phone and you used it to do a voice call with somebody else, now a phone is your access portal to your security system. Your phone is your access portal to your Wi-Fi management and control. Your phone is your camera system. It's a display of a security system, and it's all kinds of whatever you need it to be. So that's an interesting space, and for all of us now as service providers, how deeply do you go into app development, and what do you do? And I know I've talked to Bob, and Bob's shown me his apps as part of this group, and I think
Bob is the gadget guy, so he's the crazy.
Bob is a gadget guy, yeah. And so he's got apps that he's developed and products on his phone. So that's an interesting space that you can't say I'm not a phone app developer. Now so many elements of business are going on phone apps. And we have our own app. And this is my shameless plug for our PoE calculator. If you haven't used it, check out the Apple App Store and Google Play, and you'll find, just type in PoE calculator. You'll find our calculator that we even developed to help our customers measure or to estimate how much power over Ethernet they're going to need for a different application.
Which is a pretty big deal, considering we weren't thinking about powering lights a few years ago that I know of on PoE. So
that's a good
if
point.
you ask me right now how much draw, et cetera, I would not have any idea.
And what the load would be on the cable. So this has been a great conversation, David. Any last secrets you want to share with the audience about IoT? We've covered security, we've covered wireless. What other secret? We've covered convergence. Thank you, Michael, for that input on convergence. What else do we need to know about IoT as service providers and customers?
I work for a federal contractor on my day job, so I don't share secrets.
Okay.
But as a self-preservation mode.
He's doing a disclaimer, so the FBI, you can tell him not to come in. It's okay.
But ultimately, I mean, it's changing rapidly. It's growing at just an obscene level. Nobody can track this correctly. I looked at the statistics from 2012, 2015, with the expectation for the 2020 numbers, and then you see the actual numbers in 2019 leading into 2020, and they're 300-400% shy. So every few years they're trying to estimate out, and they're just getting it wrong. That trend is not, I mean, this, the cat's out of the bag, Pandora's box is open. It's not going back in. But as VARs, whether we were traditional telephony, whether we were traditional data, whether we were electricians. Like, what if you're an electrician today and you look at that LED presentation? if I'm an owner of an electrician organization, I would be a little concerned in going down a different path today. And for us, we all generally agree in this room as members of this group that we simply cannot go it alone. It's changing too fast. There's too much going on. Too many things are happening. Once you open Pandora's box, it goes in places that many of our traditional members have not gone before, but others have. And we look at it, we want to put people in strategic places within the group with our vendors, our partners, our members, and let them go deep in an angle and share openly and freely with the others to help us all. So.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Well, David, this has been
Yes,
a
sir.
great interview. Thank you very much for making time for it. And so what we're going to do now is I'd like to transition over to another new technology that I happen to know a little bit about because I support a gentleman named Bob Rankin. He's been a customer of ours for years in his space about how he uses Power over Ethernet for announcements and communication technology in a non-standard way. So let's bring Bob on. Thank you very much,
Yes, sir.
David. Yes, Bob is a gadget guy. I always look forward to my calls from Bob because he's always got some crazy new idea that he's having me
I set that right there.
figure out. Yep. So Bob,
Yes.
I don't feel like I did it justice. What you're really trying to do as you develop new technology. Give us the audience, and I'm sure the rest of the group would be interested in what are you actually working on in your mad scientist laboratory?
So as the brain tumor grows and I'm able to come up with more ideas, what's happened is we've actually worked on both IoT, which you mentioned, and traditional premise-based systems, for instance, paging. So in our business right now, we're in the notification business. And the best way to notify people in a building is probably make a voice announcement to them. And that's we see it already in fire alarm systems, but more commonly in overhead paging systems. But if you look at systems like that, many of them are getting old. A lot of businesses, especially schools, are having to upgrade their paging, and they're looking at a dilemma. Do they go replace it with large amplifiers and central wiring back to speakers, or do they go to the more current IP devices? And those IP devices are typically standalone speakers or standalone pieces because power requirements has limited it to a single speaker or a single device. What we're actually seeing now, though, is a blend where you use PoE for two reasons. One, they've made the investment in the infrastructure. They have those extra cables out there. Two, it means that there's a power source and a data source in the same location. The problem is, how do you take a non-PoE device and turn it into a usable PoE device? And since you've made that easy, I've got an example here. I can see this. So this is a product we came up with that is a combination of a paging speaker or an amplifier in here, a light, and in some cases a wireless radio gets put on it. The problem is the amplifier can run on PoE by itself, but the other accessories need 12 volts. So what do you do when you have PoE going in, but you need a separate 12-volt supply? Since you were kind enough to come out with your high-power adapter, what this gives us is the ability to take that PoE power and supply it right through to the device that supports PoE, but then break off the voltage we need to support the non-PoE devices. So now the customer says, I can use a single drop I already have. I can sell them a multitude of devices that use different voltages just by using your power injectors. So we have a couple of these we use. We also use them to add wireless gateways to some products that don't already have that capability. And once again, we're able to break off 5 volts, 12 volts, whatever voltage we need to operate those devices.
And that's really important. And I'll ask, why are people going this route? In my experience, I'm seeing a lot of technology. Notification sounds very, middle of the road, right? Paging, you're calling kids down to the office seems like a simple thing. The reality is we talked about security earlier. Security, control, and management is a huge part of notification.
It is.
If I understand right, a lot of this technology is getting into the gunshot identification and response system, which is really important these days. Being able to, you can have systems that accurately and effectively respond to a gunshot noise much faster than even a human response could do.
Yes. In fact, we just partnered with a gunshot detector, and interestingly, the same problem. It really isn't designed to run on PoE. It's designed to have I believe in this case, a 12-volt power supply source sent to it. So what we're going to be able to do is in the cavity of the unit, we'll be able to put our electronics in, which will then plug into a PoE source. And using one of your splitters, we'll be able to drop it down to 12 volts for the electronics to run, but we'll be able to use the cable and power that's already there. Then those devices will go onto our cloud, and we'll be able to actually, through an IoT processor, control things like reset. So the gunshot detector hears a single shot or multiple shots. Via our processor, it sends it to a cloud server, which then alerts authorities that there's an activity. But then the owner of the detector is able to, at the touch of a smartphone, shut off that detector or reset it. Mm-hmm. All that currently has to be done with hardware. You have to actually run new cabling out to each location. And since these are typically put in ceilings in buildings, and they cover 1,500 feet, that anytime you have to bring in new wiring, it's a much larger cost, and it brings in more contractors. We're seeing the same thing, really, just about anything you look at that traditionally needed a wire run to it and then needed a power source. The power source is usually the bigger problem. If you go to a building and you need power, especially in the ceiling, they don't put outlets in the ceiling ahead of time for people to plug things in. So now you're going to bring in an electrician. It's a complex issue to put products in places where they weren't originally designed to go.
That's a good point. And the demand is there, right? When people are asking for new and different technologies in terms of notification, paging, and you're trying to fit them into a building and an infrastructure that's existing. And it sounds like the smarter play is to do it with a PoE and a smart cable, rather than having to run a whole bunch of AC outlets and try and retrofit buildings, and the cost that drives up the cost
exactly.
to add the new protections and the new features.
I'll give you a good example. Even my home network, which is, sadly, I looked the other day, I have 31 devices connected. I'm like, where are 31 devices in my house? The smart TVs are on there, my 19 Alexas that listen to me in every room. But the point is, it's a home, so I had a switch port here and there for my phones and things, but no PoE. I don't think people think about PoE in a home. So when I had to replace the router, I realized I only had a single network connection off of it. So I put one of your little 7-port PoE switches in the basement, plugged in that one port, and now instead of just sending data up to my jacks in the house, I'm sending PoE and data. I don't need it except for 2 locations, but now in the future, I've kind of future-proofed myself. I can plug anything into one of those data jacks, even if it's not for data, and with appropriate breakout, I can run something else without having to run a wire for it, or out having to plug in a transformer into the wall, which isn't always practical either.
So I'm hearing future-proofing. PoE is a good future-proofing alternative for you.
I don't think it's going anywhere, that's for sure.
It's not a loss. It's not one of those technologies that's going away.
No.
So we got a customer who asked us through YouTube, does PoE Texas sell solar to power PoE devices? And the answer is yes and no. We sell devices that are rated to integrate with solar charge controllers, but we don't directly sell solar charge controllers. The industry of solar and power over Ethernet is a real growing one, and it's very exciting. There are so many different things you can do, whether it's IoT, that the solar industry, and being able to take your networking capability on the road and get it out even from hardwire infrastructure is really important. And we did a show on this last month with a gentleman named Rob Rollo, so go back and check out our live stream archive for the show with Rob Rollo. And we're even doing director's cuts of the show where we're breaking it down into segments so you can get just what you want out of the show rather than watching the entire hour-and-a-half conversation, which was really valuable. But I'll bring up here the 3 main components that you need in a solar power over Ethernet network. You need, obviously, the photovoltaic cells. This is how you're collecting the power. You need a charge controller, which is a device that takes the charge from the photovoltaic cells and manages your third component, which I didn't know ended up being about 40% of the total investment, the batteries. So you need the photovoltaic, you need the charge controller, and you need your batteries. And those batteries are really important because you have to find the right batteries for a long life and a good controller for them. And then once you have those 3 elements, it's very easy to add a power over Ethernet device that's rated for solar that can take the key here is you have to take a wide range of input voltages, typically from 12 to 30 volts, and output a steady output voltage for your device. In this case, We have several devices that do that, our GPOE 48V10W and the new AT1 Solar, which is a product that does PoE Plus and has a wide range of input from 12 to 30 volts in and puts out a steady 55 volts. So that's a great question from out there. Or do we do solar? And solar is a really new and exciting technology, and one I think that this group is going to be seeing a lot more of. People are looking at it in terms of security. People are looking at it in terms of IoT, and a lot of things play into that. And there are a lot of very good tools online that you can use now for sizing it. And so we'll have that conversation. Recommend you go back and check that whole show.
I just happen to notice your two lights here you're using. I see you're running a splitter to power them off of obviously a PoE drop.
We do. We did a live streaming show where we were talking power over Ethernet, and some of the audience asked if I was powering our studio over PoE, and the answer I can say it now. I can hold my hand up. It is all PoE. The only thing we don't run on PoE is the processor here down in front of me.
Yeah, I think the takeaway on PoE is people always look to whether the device is a quote PoE compatible device. And I think that's a little short-sighted. I think you need to look at the device and say, can I make it a PoE compatible device? And that's really the bigger question.
That's
what piece is going to get from you to turn that non-PoE device into a PoE device?
And that's really important. That's a great message. You don't have to be integrated PoE to make your products work with Power over Ethernet. You can simply get the right Power over Ethernet component and turn almost any device into Power over Ethernet. And that is exciting. And now with the new BT standard, that means you're not even limited to 30 watts of power or 12 volts at about 2 amp. You can go up to 12 volt 5 amp and do some pretty amazing stuff. So I'm excited about what it's going to hold for the future as we expand into new opportunities.
Very good.
Well, fantastic, Bob. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show with us.
Well, I appreciate your help.
Thank you for demonstrating your device.
He makes great products.
I like this guy. He's excellent. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks.
So we are quickly approaching the top of the hour, and I'm going to ask our lovely co-hostess, Miss Maria Medell, to come back on. And I want to get out there and see if there are any last questions that you would like to know, both as our live audience here and as our audience at home. In particular, we've got this great group of NextGen's think tank and Mindshare of great experts. So more than just me, if you want to ask a question, we can make sure we get that question asked of the live audience here. So Maria, what do we have?
It looks like we were able to answer all the ones that came in. You, Bob, and David did a wonderful job of answering all the questions.
And I'm going to just give a shout out to Rob. Thank you for that question about the solar. That's a great question. Yes.
How has
the question is how much has the PoE Texas live stream Converge PoE grown our business? And what, the first benefit that I would share with people out there that I've really appreciated is that it opens doors. I think if I would have just come knocking on NextGen's door and just said, hey, I want to come in and sit in front of this whole audience of very intelligent people who are experts in their fields and try and talk to them about PoE, I think there'd be that's very interesting. Let's talk about it. But because we do a show where we're getting feedback, we're getting input from the audience, and we're actually interacting with them, it opens doors and gives us a lot of opportunities to meet people. I do feel like it's been a benefit to our business in that respect, because it's connected us with the kinds of people who are like-minded and share an interest in the technology beyond just strictly Power over Ethernet. So I've really enjoyed that aspect of the show.
Yeah, it's opened up many different channels of communication. We'll get customers now more frequently reach out to us on Facebook after watching a video, or even ask us questions on YouTube with projects that we have to follow up on, that we wouldn't have thought to do or practice. So it gives us new projects to explore as well.
And I'll share one with you guys that might be interesting. If you're not familiar with streaming media and Newtek's NDI, it's an interesting technology where they take and compress streaming quality video, 4K video, and run it on 10 to 20 meg networks, which is really exciting. And we have an application here. I'm actually running our show on a power over Ethernet to Lightning device, and I'll show that on our screen here. It's an iPad, and I use it as a controller. But the other day I set it up and used it as a streaming video camera capture device. And I was discussing that with some gentlemen. The good news is now, because we're streaming a hardwired to the iPad, you're going to get a better video quality, and I can do a higher quality data transmission internal to a network. But I was also at NAB last week, and I met a guy who was using NDI technology to transmit streaming quality data across country. And that was a real shocker to me, that you could actually send 4K data over the internet between two VLANs and get quality streaming data, which was broadcast quality. I was blown away that was even a possibility.
We did have a question from Rob again. He wants to know what our best-selling product is.
Ooh, our best-selling product. You know, the one that I see has the widest appeal is our Power over Ethernet tester. Mm-hmm. Because it's a product, it's a battery-free, pocket-sized product that lets you troubleshoot and diagnose Power over Ethernet. And that's a huge help for people. And because it is such a common thing, and it is so valuable, being able to just quickly pull it up and turn on PoE ports, measure your Power over Ethernet. It's a handy tool that you just have in your pocket. And for less than $80, it's the kind of thing you can just buy, give to your husband or significant other.
Stocking stuffer for the holidays.
Stuffer. But I think the splitters that Bob is talking about is probably our highest volume, in the sense that it allows non-PoE experts to take Power over Ethernet and incorporate it into their products very quickly. All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience? You guys have been a fantastic audience. I have learned a lot. I've enjoyed getting to meet this group here. It's been an exciting group. So, and we love having our audience. So shout out to Rob, shout out to Tom, all of our guests out there who have been participating. We really appreciate you as our audience and making this possible. So we will catch up to you in about 2 weeks when we bring in Igor, and we're going to have Dwight from Igor. He's going to come on, and he's going to talk to us more about Power over Ethernet lighting. And we're going to get into the details of what works, what doesn't work, why we do it, why we don't do it. And it's going to be an exciting show. So we're looking forward to it. And a big thank you to the NextGen group allowing us to live stream from your Mindshare this week. And we will see you at the next show.